everyone. This is Leslie and Greg with Table Talk, Part 2 in Inner Healing. Say hi, Greg.
Hello.
Hope everyone is doing well. Thank you for tuning in with us again. I pray that God's blessings is on everyone. And I thank you for listening in. And I pray if you know anybody that could benefit from listening to our inner healing sessions, please refer them. Pass on subscribing to our channel. We also are under the ministry of fourcornersfree.com, and my website is setting-captives-free.com, which is at the bottom of this video, for further information on everything spiritual warfare and deliverance. Today, brothers and sisters, the Lord has spoke to me and Greg and instructed us to put forth the second video. And what I want to talk about and explain before we start is how the enemy, at the time that God creates us and puts us in the womb of our mothers, he creates us perfectly and beautifully. And he puts us in the womb of our mother with a beautiful and wonderful and powerful calling of God to come forth and manifest as we grow in the Lord. The enemy counterfeits that, counteracts that. The enemy, at the time that we're put in the womb, also tries to send assignments against us, even as babies, even before we're born and then right after we're born, and manipulates our behaviors. And that's what I kind of want to talk about today. I also want to talk about what DID is. Now, a long time ago, you have probably heard the term of personality disorder or multiple personalities. They call it DID now, dissociated identity disorder. I want to explain a little bit about what this is. Through traumatic events, your brain, God made our brains to be able to, under a traumatic event, split, fragment, separate, to be able to handle, to be able to cope, to be able to receive healing. Because if we did not have our brains have the capability of doing this, we would die. There's no way we could even exist, because it would be too much of a traumatic event. You think about in the world when people go through horrific things, how they're even to boldly come forward, and how God can use their experiences to help testify to others, because every one of us have been through traumatic events. What the enemy does at these times, brothers and sisters, through these traumatic events, is the enemy will come through and cause ways and behaviors within a person's thinking, such as over amount of different emotions that will affect a person throughout their whole life, and how they see things and how they cope as an adult. And if you're not taught, as an adult, how these things enter and how these things have took hold and rooted, then you just go on through life and you think that this is just the way things are, and my life is like this, and this is how I am. But brothers and sisters, what I want to explain to you is this is the device of the enemy. And without an understanding of deliverance and understanding of inner healing, most people do walk through life crippled with anxiety and all these things of hate and rejection and isolation and abandonment and all these things that can affect a person's view of life and quality of life. So, with this being said, brothers and sisters, Greg has been willing to want to talk about through his own healing process. We just started in January, and with God leading and healing and directing, he wants to talk about how some events in his early childhood has affected him even today. My husband is 59 years old. What we're going to talk about goes all the way back to when Greg was in a memory of 4 years old and go from there. So, Greg, I'm going to ask you, honey, if you would talk about what happened at your neighbor's house at 4 years old.
Well, it started off with pretty much innocence. We were playing cowboys and Indians, and I had my little pop guns, and my friend wanted me to show her pop gun and took me in to sit on the bed, and I sat on the bed with her. She handed me her gun, and she said, "Try this one." And I go, "Wow, okay." I pointed it at her and went, "Pow!" At the same time, the gun went off, and it was real, and it blew a hole through her arm, and blood went flying everywhere. And I sat there in shock and amazement. Remembered seeing the police, parents, people yelling and screaming, moments of anger and hate and not understanding what happened. Lots of frustration.
I can't imagine. I mean, you were 4 years old. You had to be scared.
Petrified. I wanted to hide, but yet it was like I was stuck in time, completely paralyzed. That's the best I could remember it.
Was the little girl okay?
I believe so. I didn't find out that day that she was until the next day. I was just told everything was okay. A lot of things were spoken hush hush, quiet. I didn't really have a comprehension to it at this point.
Okay. Wow. I'm so sorry, honey, that you went through that. What emotions did that bring up for you, if you can remember? You were just a child. What?
Three main emotions were hatred towards myself, confusion, and just paralyzing feeling of just shock.
Shock. Of course you were shocked. And so, brothers and sisters, through that traumatic event, you notice that Greg spoke of self-hatred and shock and fear. Those are all things that the enemy can invade one's person with through a traumatic event such as this. And then once the enemy is able to come in through these traumatic events, they can set root in behaviors and belief systems that can affect you if you're not aware through your whole life. So, Greg, let's move on, because this was in the same year, from what you said, that this experience happened with the gun. But if you don't mind, let's talk about this situation that you're going to speak on next.
This happened when I was at relatively just a little time after that, at the same age, well, at a babysitter's house. We were there, is all I remember, and I can't say I know that who this person was that done this to me, but I know that it was either the babysitter's older daughter or the older daughter was watching me at the time. And the short of it is that she molested me, and my understanding of who I was as a little boy changed dramatically. And that's about the gist of what happened.
Yeah. Wow, I can't even imagine, Greg, all of that in 1 year, and you were just 4 years old. And once again, that traumatic experience can cause, through how it set off emotions in you, allows the enemy to be able to come in. Once again, fear. Once again, how you felt about yourself as a little boy. Let's move on into, you're getting ready to go into kindergarten. So I'm guessing the age was around 5 to 6. What happened at that time?
Well, that's when I was introduced to a way my mother would tell me I would feel better, which was giving me pills I understand today were Ritalin 4 times a day. They were little orangish pink pills that I took, which actually I think made me very, I don't know, just didn't seem to help a lot.
What did she say why you had to take these?
She said they were going to help me, and that was my mother, so there really wasn't a conception of anything more than, yes, mother.
Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry, Greg, because of course you're a child. You don't know. When you're a child, you we're told, that we are to do certain things, and we just do. We just do. We don't understand the implications of why we're being told to do certain things. We're children, and so let's move past that to now. You're about 7 years old, and your mom has told you that you need to go in and have these certain treatments done. So, Greg, why don't you talk about what led up to that and what happened?
I believe what led up to it is my mom had some suspective feelings about what the Ritalin was doing and was questioning it. So they sent me to I'll just say for lack of understanding, a more superior doctor or treatment.
What happened there?
At this place, they stuck little wire needles into my head all over it with some like ointment on it, and I looked like a science project when they got done. So that was the best I could explain, and laid me down, and I took like a cup of medicine before I went in to do the little needles in my head, and it wasn't a very comfortable feeling. I can't give you all the conclusiveness as to what all happened during that time. I believe the appointments were roughly an hour to 2 hours. I can't say how long because I believe I was out most of the time.
You had said that you believe it was about 4 times a year from 7 to 8 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, if we're going by my memory, I'm going to try and say it was roughly 4 times a year. 2 times for certain I remembered clearly.
Okay, so what did you say to your mom when you were going through these? Because from what you shared with me, it was painful, and you told your mom you didn't want to do it anymore.
Yes, I didn't really like needles already, so the needles weren't working good with me, and I felt very uncomfortable, for which they gave me the cup of whatever it was before I went in this time, and they also darkened the room and put on some Asian music, the lady who did it, and sung to me. Still felt very uncomfortable, still was a little bit uncomfortable with everything that happened. Don't really know how to explain my feelings there.
How long before those treatments were stopped?
I would have to say I was roughly I'm going to make a guess about 8 years old, 8 to 9.
Okay. Okay. So let's move past that age, Greg. And well, it actually happened around the same age, it looks like, at 7, when you had an experience at your cousin's house. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it seemed that as a boy and my two sisters, being with a bunch of girls who were older than them, and that was the older group, the one I wanted to be with, which I was disassociated with. And I was listening in on them, and they were talking ghost stories and anything that would be exciting for kids to want to listen to, but was separated from it. And they talked about a spirit being in the wall. And to me, that sounded exciting. I'm a little boy, those kind of little stories were exciting. And they left the room, their group, and I was in there by myself. And I went over and sat down. It was where my family member had a record album there. I believe it was, looking on it today, The Fifth Dimension. And I was told that there was spirits in that wall, a spirit in particular. And it was like a ghost, a friendly ghost. And I can't remember if it happened that day or that night in a dream, but I was able to put my hand into that wall, and it was like a jungle, and there was an entity in there, or a spirit, and it ran towards me and then just disappeared into me. Not understanding everything, it was frightening and fearful, and yet a little bit exciting. I'm not really sure. I had so many mixed emotions at that time.
Okay, so after this event, after this happened, did you notice any peculiar things? How did it make you feel? Did it manifest?
I believe I had more dreams at night, more fearful dreams. A dream about a man trying to capture me in a dream. He was, I believe, an Asian man with a knife over by where I used to live. Also dreams of a man with lots of branches and stuff coming out of his face and being very angry and coming at me. I can't really remember them all. They're so vivid at this time.
What emotions did it trigger in you?
At those times, more just fear, and then not fear, feeling bad about why should I have fear, and why should I be weak, and why should I be a wimp.
But you were feeling like, why should I? Because you were experiencing fear?
And I was struggling with my feelings of why and who these things were and what they were. Somehow knew they weren't right, but never had the concept or anybody to tell me otherwise.
So, brothers and sisters, through these traumatic events we just talked about, there was 5 here, and in a short amount of time, from the age of 4 to 8, you can see through these traumatic events and these situations how the enemy can make way, make a legal right, make an entrance through things like fear and self-hatred, and even through electric shock treatments that his mother took him to, which would create in a person, a little boy, not understanding fear and things like resentment and things like, questionable things that a child wouldn't even really understand until later in life. And all through life, you have these things with you because you didn't even understand how they've manifested through your life to begin with. They always have a beginning, and it always starts with the enemy as a child. So, Greg, now that you've been having, I think we've walked into 2 months now of inner healing sessions. We started frequently. I mean, it was almost every other day we were going into an inner healing. And now you've gotten so much victory and so much deliverance from a lot of things that the enemy has had legal rights to come in through your generational line, through and brothers and sisters, when I use this term, rituals, we'll talk about that in another session. But yes, through rituals, through behaviors and belief systems and things that happened years ago that you couldn't even remember. Now that you see the Holy Spirit working and healing through you, in a closing statement, what would you like to say?
Well, I would say a lot of these things that you don't understand feeling wise are things that you can connect with, and through the Holy Spirit mechanically adjust your reasoning and understanding how to deal with, how to grow and become stronger in your faith and in your understanding of yourself.
Isn't it true that even Jesus has, through those traumatic times, has spoke to you where he was at that time you were going through those traumatic events, and he has said and explained to you where he has been, that you were not walking through these traumatic events alone?
Yes.
Isn't it true that also Jesus has talked through you, and he has let you know that he loves you, that he's protecting you, and that he's watching over you?
Yes, I mean, this is very true, and an important thing to understand, that the Lord is with you at all times and has been with me and helped me to understand his reality to this and my reality to it. I really couldn't describe it all in enough time right now, but I will just say that yes, the Lord has done that.
It's amazing, because through my own inner healing experiences, the Lord just comes right in and he explains, I was through this situation with you, daughter. You know, when we question, where was God through these traumatic events? How could God even allow a circumstance like this even to happen? You know, where was God? Why do these things happen? And yet God just reveals he's never left our side. He was always there. A lot of times in my own inner healing session, he took the trauma for me. He went through the ritual for me in replace of me. He took me to another place while I was actually going through such a situation, so that I had no memory of it, so that I could heal from it. So, brothers and sisters, we're going to end there. This is part 2 of Table Talk with Leslie and Greg. And we're going to, sometime when the Lord leads us to do a part 3, we will do that. So we thank you for tuning in with us. You want to say goodbye, Greg?
Okay, see you later out there, and thanks for coming in and hearing us.
God bless you all, brothers and sisters.